America is at a crossroads facing a critical juncture in its history. A wave of fear washes over us after each tragic mass shooting. The immediate reaction? Blame the firearm. Blame the Second Amendment. This knee-jerk reaction is all too common. This emotional response, while understandable, is misguided and counterproductive. It diverts attention from the real issues at hand. As a constitutional originalist, I believe in upholding the Second Amendment as it was intended, to ensure the individual right to keep and bear arms. This right is not about hunting or sport shooting. It goes far beyond recreational activities. It is about self-defense and the ultimate protection against tyranny. It is about ensuring the freedom and liberty of every American citizen. It is a cornerstone of our society. We are bombarded with images of so-called assault weapons, demonized by the media and politicians. This portrayal is often sensationalized. The AR-15 in particular has become the villain of the narrative. It is frequently singled out in debates, but this focus on the tool, rather than the individual wielding it, is a dangerous distraction. It ignores the root causes of violence and prevents us from finding effective solutions. We need to dig deeper. It's time we shift the conversation away from emotional pleas for gun control and towards a fact-based approach rooted in the Constitution. We must ground our discussions in reality. We must acknowledge the inconvenient truth. Criminals, by their very nature, disregard the law. They operate outside legal boundaries. They will always find ways to obtain firearms, regardless of how many restrictions we impose on law-abiding citizens. Gun control laws only serve to disarm the innocent, leaving them vulnerable to those who operate outside the bounds of law. This creates a dangerous imbalance. They create the illusion of safety while doing little to address the complex societal issues that contribute to violence. We need real solutions, not illusions. It's time we stop blaming the tool and start addressing the real problem, the individual behind the trigger. Personal accountability is key. We need to have honest conversations about mental health, about personal responsibility, and about creating a society where violence is not seen as a solution. Education and awareness are crucial. We need to empower citizens to protect themselves, not disarm them, and leave them at the mercy of criminals. Self-defense is a fundamental right. This is not about fear-mongering. It is about facing the harsh realities of our world. It's about facing reality and taking responsibility for our own safety and the safety of our communities. Together, we can create a safer, more responsible society. The mainstream media often portrays AR-15s as the weapon of choice in most homicides, creating a skewed perception among the public. This is simply not true. The FBI's own statistics paint a very different picture. In 2020, rifles were used in only 3% of homicides. Bare hands and feet were used more often, almost 5%. Knives, blunt weapons, and others are used in 22% of all murders. Are we talking about banning those? In contrast, handguns were used in over 59% of cases. The focus on assault weapons is misplaced. The data does not support the narrative that these firearms are the primary threat. It's a narrative driven by emotion, not by facts. The push to ban these firearms involves political agendas and public perception. The media and certain political groups have shaped public opinion through repeated exposure to alarming headlines. The AR-15, with its military-style aesthetics, has been demonized by anti-gun advocates. Terms like weapons of war and high-powered are used to instill fear and sway public opinion. However, the AR-15 is a semi-automatic rifle, functionally similar to many other commonly owned firearms. It fires one bullet per trigger pull, just like a hunting rifle. The focus on the AR-15 is not about safety, it's about control. It's about chipping away at the Second Amendment, one gun at a time. If they can convince the public that this one type of firearm is inherently dangerous, it paves the way for further restrictions on other firearms. We must continue to challenge the false narrative surrounding so-called assault weapons. Knowledge and understanding are powerful tools in this debate. We must educate ourselves and others about the facts, not the fear-mongering. We must hold our elected officials accountable for enacting laws based on evidence, not emotion. The future of our Second Amendment rights depends on it. The call for universal background checks has become a rallying cry for gun control advocates, echoing through the streets and legislative halls. They argue that this measure will keep firearms out of the hands of criminals and prevent mass shootings, creating a safer society for all. However, this argument ignores a crucial reality. Criminals, by definition, do not obey the law. They find ways to circumvent the system. They obtain their firearms through illegal channels, bypassing background checks altogether, rendering the system ineffective against them. Universal background checks only serve to burden law-abiding citizens, adding another layer of bureaucracy to the already cumbersome process of purchasing a firearm, making it more difficult for responsible individuals to exercise their rights. The tragic truth is that universal background checks have not stopped a single mass shooting. The system has failed to prevent these horrific events. In fact, many of the deadliest mass shootings in recent history were carried out by individuals who passed background checks, slipping through the cracks of the system. The shooters in the Parkland, Florida, and Sutherland Springs, Texas massacres both obtained their firearms legally, despite the existing background check requirements. This is not to say that background checks are inherently bad. They have their place in the regulatory framework. However, they are not the panacea that gun control advocates claim them to be. They are not a one-size-fits-all solution. They are a reactive measure that fails to address the root causes of gun violence, merely treating the symptoms rather than the disease. Instead of focusing on ineffective measures like universal background checks, we should be directing our resources towards solutions that actually work, such as comprehensive mental health care and community support. This includes addressing the mental health crisis in this country, providing accessible and effective treatment for those in need, providing adequate support for law enforcement, ensuring they have the resources and training necessary to protect our communities, and promoting responsible gun ownership through education and training, empowering citizens to handle firearms safely and responsibly. We need to stop throwing band-aids on a gaping wound and start addressing the underlying issues that plague our society, seeking long-term solutions. The Second Amendment guarantees the right to keep and bear arms, not the right to keep and bear arms after jumping through a series of arbitrary hoops. It is a fundamental individual right that should not be infringed upon. Universal background checks are just one example of the incremental erosion of our Second Amendment rights, a slow chipping away at our freedoms. We must remain vigilant and oppose any measure that infringes upon our constitutional right to self-defense, standing firm in the protection of our liberties. Gun-free zones, which are intended to be safe havens, often become targets for those who wish to do harm. These zones inadvertently signal to criminals that they will face little to no resistance, making them more attractive targets. Studies have shown that most mass public shootings over the past 25 years did not involve assault rifles, as the media and political narratives often suggest. Instead, handguns were the weapon of choice in these tragic events. According to the Crime Prevention Research Center, these shootings primarily took place in what are supposed to be gun-free zones. Imagine a world where law-abiding citizens are empowered to defend themselves without jumping through bureaucratic hoops. By passing nationwide constitutional carry, we can ensure that responsible citizens have the ability to protect themselves and others. The data supports this shift in approach. By eliminating these zones and embracing constitutional carry, we can create a society where potential threats are met with immediate and effective resistance. It's time to stop relying on measures that have proven ineffective and start focusing on solutions that empower citizens and protect our communities. Let's look at the books and start eliminating the thousands of unconstitutional gun laws that burden responsible gun owners. It's time for a change, a move towards a safer and more secure society where the right to self-defense is upheld and respected. The Second Amendment is not just a relic of the past, it is a vital part of our present and future. By embracing its principles and rejecting ineffective gun-free zones, we can create a safer, more resilient society. Stay frosty, my friends. Keep your head down and your powder dry.